Okay, this entry ticket is going to be reviewing our learning target of sequences. So, number one here, ask what type of sequence do we have? And it can be either arithmetic, which is repeated addition, or geometric, which is repeated subtraction. So I'm going to check. I have a first term of 6 and a zero term of 3. If I do 6 minus 3, I get 3. If I do the second term and subtract the first term from it, I get the same value of 3. If I do the third term, which is 12, and subtract 9 from it, I get 3. If I take 15, the fourth term, and subtract the previous term of 3 from it, of 12 from it, I get a 3 again. So I keep on getting the same common difference of 3. This would be an arithmetic sequence where we are repeatedly adding 3. 3 plus 3 is 6. 6 plus 3 is 9. 9 plus 3 is 12. 12 plus 3 is 15. And then we're asked, what's the recursive rule? Well, our A1 value, our first value, would be 6. And then what are we doing? We are taking and repeatedly adding 3 to whatever the previous value is. Okay. The explicit rule is in the form of A1 plus the common difference D times n minus 1. We just spelled those out in the recursive rule. We are starting at 6, we are adding 3, and we're doing it n minus 1 times. Okay, and then the last question, what is the value of a given term? If I'm asked for the 10th term, I need to put a 10 in the equation. Okay, so depending on if I use the explicit or the simplified form, if I did the explicit form, I would put a 10 here in place of the n. 10 minus 1 is 9. I'll pull up the calculator again here real quick. I would 6 plus 3 times 10 minus 1, mental math, that's 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 6 plus 27 is 33. Or I could simplify it as shown here. Okay, 3 times n is 3n. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. 6 minus 3 is ultimately 3. I could do 3 plus 3 times 10 to get 33. Okay. So now, what about the other half of the entry ticket? All right, we're asked to classify in the sequence and explain your reasoning here. Well, 1 plus negative 6 would be, so if I start off and I try to see, is this thing arithmetic again? Am I repeatedly adding something? It really doesn't look like it. But if I take negative 5 and subtract 1, I get negative 6. Okay. If I take 25 and subtract negative 5, I don't get the same thing. So this is not, okay, this is not a arithmetic sequence on the other half. Meanwhile, if I divide consecutive terms, so something like, hey, what's negative 5 divided by 1? Negative 5. 25 divided by negative 5. Negative 5. The third term, negative 1, a value of negative 125 divided by 25. If I take any two consecutive terms and divide them, I keep on getting negative 5. So that is what we call a common ratio. And now jump to the answer key here. We are repeatedly multiplying by negative 5. 1 times negative 5 is not a negative 5. Negative 5 times negative 5. Negative times negative, positive. 5 times 5, 25. 25 times negative 5 changes the sign again, so on and so forth. Okay, so it's geometric, repeated multiplication. The recursive rule, once again, what is A1? Negative 5. How do I get each value? I would take, if I want A1, I got to look at A0 and multiply it by negative 5 there. Okay. And then the explicit rule, put that stuff together. What are we starting at? Negative 5. What are we doing? We're multiplying by negative 5, and we're doing it n minus 1 times. And that doesn't really simplify a whole lot further. And then lastly, if I want to go find the 10th term, pull up the calculator again here real quick, I would simply type in the rule, negative 5 times negative 5. And I need to make sure that the exponent here is 10 for the n. I'm putting 10 in place of the n that I have in my recursive rule, okay, minus 1. So that's ultimately negative 5 to the 9th power. I don't really need to do mental math to get that. I get 9,765,625. So there you go. identifying the two different types of sequences we've talked about: arithmetic, repeated adding, know the recursive and explicit rules. You have that on the sheet that you were given of formulas, and then geometric, repeated multiplication. Once again, know their recursive and explicit rules, and then be able to use them to find a given term.